Hello. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Val's Airguns. Hey, to my regular viewers, I apologize. It's been a moment since I've published anything. Oh, I won't bore you with the details, but yeah, life intervened and it kept me away from making videos for a while. But I am certainly happy to be back, and I wanted to both give a quick update and address a couple of things that I got in comments during the time. Well, it's about the last 8 weeks that I hadn't published much, but I have been staying on the comments. And one in particular was kind of funny. We get asked a lot questions about how we should store air guns, what's both safe and what's good for the mechanisms. And I had some medical things going on. And anyway, I had been kind of up and down, not sleeping well, and was answering email or comments in the middle of the night. And I didn't read one thoroughly enough, and I would apologize to the individual, but they were so offended by my response, they told me that they were removing their subscription and had lost all confidence in me. And I got the perception it was a younger individual, not that we should, care about age, but sometimes, some of the questions asked, you kind of get a sense of where they're coming from. And basically they wanted to know, and where I misread it was they were talking about a 1377 or 1322 Crossman air gun pistol, and I had responded as though they were talking about a 2240. And because I get asked that question much more frequently, and because I didn't have my little helpers on here to help me read it clearly. And basically, they were wanting me to condone leaving this air pistol fully charged, cocked, loaded, under their bed. And my response to it was two-part, one being functional considerations, and the second part of it being safety consideration. From a functional standpoint, and since I answered it this way, I'll stick with CO2 guns for a moment. In the case of a 2240 or any CO2 gun, before the legal departments got involved with the response, manufacturers used to suggest leaving the gun charged. And the reason for doing that is it keeps pressure on all of the valves and seals so that things don't open up and start to dry up and shrivel out of place. A little bit of pressure on them is very good. So my response for CO2 guns today still is to leave them charged with CO2, but uncocked and unloaded and separate from ammunition, because of safety concerns. We don't want kids getting in there and putting a pellet in or something, and sometimes they've seen enough on TV to know how to load a bolt action and pull the trigger. And that was part of my concern for the individual that was asking about their their unlocked and cocked pistol under their bed. And the second part of it is, so for CO2 guns, my preference is the CO2 cartridge with some gas in it in the gun, the pistol not locked up, the pistol not loaded or cocked in any way, preferably locked up where it's secure. In the case of a pneumatic gun, it's always best to leave one or two pumps in the gun's reservoir for the same reasons. It keeps the seals in place, it keeps the valve and all the springs slightly tensioned as they should be. So in the event of a 1377 or 1322 in storage, I would say leave a pump or two in the pistol, and then leave it uncocked, safety on, and preferably somewhere more secure than under your bed. And thinking about this, my concern for the individual is, you wake up in the morning and your little brother or your kid sister's pointing your 1377 at you and you end up with a big blemish on your forehead, best case, and missing an eye, worst case. So I do not recommend leaving them around loaded. And that's both for the safety concern that I just goofed on, but also mechanically. We even used to get into this with firearms, with different firearm mechanisms like the side-by-sides that say, don't leave your side-by-side shotgun loaded. if it's an exposed hammer one, you can because there's no tension. But if it's a hammerless, anytime you cock it, it's put the springs under tension, and the springs that drop the hammer, and you don't want those sitting there under tension for a long time. The same thing with the 1377. To leave a pump or two in the air system's groovy, but to go ahead and cock that hammer, it's a small coil spring that drives together forward a fairly heavy hammer or striker with enough velocity to open the valve the way we want it. And if we leave that spring compressed for a year, it doesn't do it any good as far as delivering the velocities we need for it to perform well. So don't leave them cocked. In terms of BB guns, your typical Daisy style BB gun, leave them uncocked, unloaded, they're just fine. For other kinds of spring guns, same thing. Target pistols, any of that, spring guns should not be stored with the spring cocked. For PCPs, you got to follow the manufacturer's recommendations, but I think most of those recommend having some air in them during storage. With things like my Crossman 3622, I leave it charged. It doesn't leak air, I leave it charged, and I check it before I go to the range, but I do not see any reason to drain it each time. Other than potentially safety, but I keep mine secured, so that's not really an issue for me. We've covered CO2 spring guns, be they brake barrel, the BB guns, or any other form of spring gun, even if it's a gas spring. Yes, I understand it may not damage your gas spring, but all in all, it's better still in my mind not to leave things like that cocked. And I certainly think from a safety standpoint, it's better to leave that uncocked. So those are my thoughts on how to store your various types of air guns, and I apologize to that individual for confusing his question. The other thing that I get asked infrequently, and I had somebody asking about again this month, was what kind of 22 caliber air gun should they get, thinking that later on they might want to turn it into a 22 long rifle firearm. And could I make a good recommendation, just in case they needed to? Well, air guns are not firearms. They're very distinctly different critters. And as one very short answer to this individual's question is, and I told him the one he had in mind wouldn't work, and I tried to explain why. They came back with, a different one maybe. And the most basic part of any firearm is its barrel. And because we say 22 caliber air gun and 22 caliber rifle and 22 long rifle, those are not actually the same physical dimensions. And a 22 firearm caliber, 22 short, long rifle, 22 CB, any of the 22 rimfires in modern production, are a larger diameter bullet than the 22 caliber pellet that we shoot. So for one thing, the bullet won't go through the barrel, and it's hard to make any kind of firearm without having a barrel. So that's where that is dead in the water right away, and that is one of the reasons that air guns and firearms are different. Now, as you move into the larger calibers, there's more compatibility there, perhaps in 357 or 9mm. But they were talking about your Gamos, Crossmans, and those kind of things being converted to 22 long rifle firearms. And no, it just doesn't happen. I've seen people go the other way, where they'll shoot 22 caliber pellets out of a 22 caliber rifle. Because they can load the pellet in, and then they'll load one of those Ramset 22 caliber blanks that you use on the nail guns behind it, and you can drive a pellet very fast that way, like 2,500 feet per second. But it's undersized in the bore. It's not filling up the whole bore or internal of the barrel. And so you can't go the other way. And often calibers, while we're on it, let me see if I can stop that thing real quick. Sorry about that. While we're talking about calibers, in case you don't know, and I think most viewers here probably do, the nomenclature of 22, 44, 357, those may or may not be accurate in terms of the actual dimensions of the bullet. For instance, a 44 Magnum, that bullet is .429 in caliber. So, best case, it should be a 43, not a 44. And when you get into ballistic comparisons, then a 41 Magnum is actually a .41 caliber bullet. So in comparing the two, it's not as great a caliber disparity as you'd initially, conclude. Whereas, say, a 38 Special and a 357, yes, 357 is a Magnum cartridge, but they both use the same diameter bullet. They're both firing a .357 caliber bullet. So different nomenclature, different names, more to do with marketing and other bullets that might have come before them than it has to do with the specific caliber. And even then, there's a profound difference between a 22 long rifle .22 and a 22 caliber centerfire .223. While the bullet diameter is very similar, those are substantially different cartridges. So as one gains knowledge about firearms, air guns, and those kinds of things, these become known. And that was part of my assumption why maybe it was a younger person that was asking me about it and was perhaps looking for a way to get a firearm that they weren't legally able to buy yet. So those were a couple of the things that came in. What was it? There was one other thing I wanted to talk about on that. Well, if I can remember it, I will include it at the end here. The other thing I wanted to do is, give a shout out for the gun of the week. But I'm going to do that in a separate video. So anyway, I wanted to give an update as far as what was going on. Wanted to answer a couple of things that I saw coming up again in the comments. And wanted to let you guys know that I didn't fall off the face of the earth. I am up and kicking, and I will be producing more and be seeing a lot more of you guys. Hey, if there's anything you want to see, drop me a note in the comments. And thanks a lot for sticking with me. See you on the next one.